All right. Good day, brothers, and welcome to the Real Dads Network Zoom call, our weekly 7 p.m. call. Tonight, we're honored to have Dr. Philippe Douyon, who is a board-certified neurologist, author, and a health coach. And Doc, we're excited about you being here, and we're looking forward to you sharing some information with us tonight. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. So today I thought I would really talk about how being a father is all about the brain, and not just talking about it from the perspective of a neurologist, but also talking about it from the perspective of a father. So I've got two boys, 15 and 13, and I've got a baby girl on the way due September 18th that I am really excited about. And being a brain first dad means that you've got to understand that before you can lead your family, before you can provide for your family, before you can protect your family, you really have to understand how your brain works and then how the brains of the people that you love work. And so the way that I thought I would start this off tonight is by telling a story. And so here's the story. So a few years ago, I am sitting in my office. It's a beautiful afternoon, and I'm working on patient notes. And there was this frantic knock on the door. And it was one of my administrative assistants. And she burst through the door and she goes, Dr. Douyon, James is here. James is here, and he's in a wheelchair. And James says that he cannot walk. And I knew James really well. He'd been my patient for years. And James was somebody who had experienced a significant amount of psychological trauma in his life. And he had manifested different symptoms throughout the years based on whatever stresses were happening in his life at that moment. But paralysis was never one of those symptoms. So, in that moment where my administrative assistant comes into my office, I knew two things. The first thing that I knew was that medication was not going to solve James's problem. I also knew that there was no test that I could order. There was no picture of his brain, picture of his spine that I could order that would reveal what the problem was. James was suffering from what we call a conversion disorder. This was his body's way of manifesting psychological stress, right? His symptoms were very, very real, but there wasn't damage to his brain. There wasn't damage to his spinal cord. This was his brain that was really overwhelmed by stress and a nervous system that was seeking safety. The second thing that I knew was that insurance was not paying for this visit. He was not a scheduled appointment. He just kind of walked in or rolled in off the street, no appointment at all. So this was not, a scheduled visit that had prior authorization. So insurance wasn't going to pay for this. I was about to do some real transformative work, the kind of work that, gets rid of the underlying cause so these symptoms never show up again. And even though I was about to do that kind of transformative work, I was going to get paid $0 for it. So I told my administrative assistant to bring James back into the exam room. So I walk into the exam room and there he is sitting in a wheelchair. And I say to James, I'm like, James, what's going on? What's wrong? And he says to me, Doctor, I can't walk. More specifically, he says, Dr. Douyon, I can't walk side to side. I can only walk side to side, but I can't walk forward and backwards. Right? So I say to James, I was like, all right, show me. So James is sitting in a wheelchair. He puts the leg rest down. He stands up. He stands over, takes a step over the leg rest to his left, does the same thing with his right leg, and kind of side shuffles back and forth, left to right. So I say, okay, James, take a step forward. And James like, Doc, I can't. And he looks off balance. So I sit him back down. We have a chat for a few minutes. And then I ask him to do the same thing again. I have him stand up, take a, he side shuffles back and forth. And when I tell him to take a step forward, again, he says, Doc, I can't. So at this point, I take his left leg and I toss it out in front of him. And now he's all wobbly, like he's going to fall with his left leg out in front. And I say, James, I want you to take your right leg and throw it out in front of you. So he throws it out in front of him, and now he's really unsteady. And I'm like, James, take your left leg, take a step forward. And over a few minutes, he's able to do it. And finally, we're able to get James to walk forward and backwards. And so James, within 20 minutes of him wheeling into my office, he's able to walk out on his own. And my staff comes in and they're like, Dr. Douyon, what did you do? Like, how did you get him to walk? You're a genius, you know? And so what does James's story have to do with fatherhood? And it's everything. It has everything to do with fatherhood. Because James, his issue was not that his brain wasn't working well. His issue wasn't that his legs weren't working well. His issue was the story that his brain was telling him about his legs. His brain had convinced him that he wasn't able to move forward in a safe way. And as fathers, don't we do that exact same thing sometimes? A lot of men are struggling, not because they lack intelligence or strength or motivation or the capability. They're struggling because the stories their brains are telling them about who they are and what they're capable of and how they should show up. A lot of men are struggling because they believe stories like, I'm not good enough. I didn't have a father, so I don't know how to be one. I'll mess up my kids. My job is to provide money, and that's it, and that's enough. Real men don't talk about emotions. Real men don't ask for help. And sometimes we even start to believe the false stories that society tells us about who we are and the kind of fathers we are. Like when they say things like false things like Black fathers are absent or Black fathers are deadbeat dads. And just like James, we start believing those stories until eventually they become our limitations. The problem isn't in our ability. The problem is in the stories that our brains are believing about who we are and what we're capable of. So before you think that this is a talk about parenting techniques, it's not. It's a talk about the brain because I'm a neurologist. Have you ever heard of pregnancy brain? So pregnancy brain is a time during pregnancy when usually moms have difficulty remembering things. They may have difficulty focusing. They might have brain fog. And it's something that we always associate with mothers, as if they're the only ones whose brain changed during pregnancy. But the truth is that as dads, we experience our own version of pregnancy brain. Throughout all of our lives, our brains go through these critical periods in its development when it's more primed than other periods of time to learn, to adapt, to heal. During these periods of times, our brains are capable of making new neurons, new connections at an easier rate than other times. And sometimes our brains are even losing neurons and losing connections depending on what it is that we need in order for the brain to become as efficient as possible. So mom brain or pregnancy brain is a real thing. And during that time, there are changes that are occurring in a mother's brain. So that way it takes the focus off herself and puts the focus on making sure that her baby survives. But we go through the exact same thing. Our brains change in a way to take the focus off ourselves and make sure that our babies also thrive. So daddy brain is also a real thing. And so what's going on in a father's brain when his partner, his wife, his woman is pregnant is that neuroplasticity is happening. Your brain's ability to adapt, learn, and heal. You're making new neurons and new connections. You're also losing some neurons and losing some connections. All things so that way you engage in behaviors to enhance the survival of your child. One of the changes that may even happen is that there are parts of your brain that might get a little bit smaller. Right? Neuroplasticity allows you, the father, to take the focus off yourself and make sure that your baby thrives. And the things that cause these changes to happen are the same things that cause a woman's brain to change. It's all hormones. And it's the same hormones that are affecting the mother are affecting the father. So a hormone like prolactin, which causes a woman's breast to get bigger and filled with milk, well, prolactin also impacts us. It impacts us in ways so that way it triggers our paternal instincts and it increases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So that way we can bond to our babies and we can respond to things that are going to threaten our baby's survival. Even our testosterone levels change when our babies are born. And look, you may not like to hear this, but when a baby is born, our testosterone levels drop. And it drops so that way we're no longer engaging in those mating behaviors. We're not necessarily going out there and trying to father other children. We're putting the focus on our newborn child and the family that we have. Being a really good father is heavily inspired by your partner's pregnancy. Daddy's brain is the reason why not just babies survive, but it's the reason why a lot of babies thrive. So you've got to be real receptive to your partner, to what your baby needs, what your partner needs. You've got to embrace your daddy's brain because it's an expert version of your brain. It is your brain has evolved in that moment to become an expert at being a father. It's nature's beautiful adaptation so that way you can ensure that your baby survives and that your baby thrives. So for years, I have studied how stress impacts the brain, how trauma impacts the brain, how belonging impacts the brain, how identity impacts the brain, how connection impacts the brain. And here's something that I've learned. Every family has a brain, not a literal brain, but like a collective brain, right? Every family has a shared identity of who we are. Every family has shared memory. Every family has like a shared emotional system. Every family has a way of interpreting the world. And a father plays an enormous role in shaping that brain, in shaping the collective brain of his family, whether or not that father realizes it or not. One of the greatest misconceptions about fatherhood is that we're there primarily to shape behavior. But that's not actually all that we do. As fathers, we shape brains. We shape our babies' brains. We shape our family's brains. Every interaction or lack thereof changes the brains of our children. Every conversation that we have with them is wiring their brain. Every reaction that we have to them is wiring their brain. Every time we connect with them in some way, it's wiring their brain. Every time we neglect them, it's wiring their brain. A baby's brain, a child's brain, and even adult brains are constantly asking the same question. It's this one important question that we all need answered. And that question is, am I safe? And as fathers, we really help to answer that question, not just with the words that we use, but with our presence, with our consistency, with our attention, with our love, with the way that we show up. As a neurologist, I see something that a lot of people miss. The human brain is not just designed to merely survive, although that is its primary function, to make sure that we survive. But it's not there just to make sure that we survive. The human brain is designed to make sure that we belong. Belonging is not just a luxury. Belonging is really about biology. Children don't need just food and shelter. They need connection. They need to connect to you. They need to feel connected. When they feel connected, their brains flourish. When they feel connected, stress decreases. And stress has a way of killing neurons in the brain. When babies feel connected, they're much more resilient. Their creativity expands. Their confidence grows. Their hope grows. Their sense of belonging grows. But when kids feel invisible, when they feel disconnected, when they feel unseen, the opposite happens. Their stress goes up, their anxiety goes up, depression happens, isolation happens, and eventually, you know what's really suffers? It's their identity that suffers. A child that doesn't feel seen begins to wonder if they matter to you. And then they start to wonder, do they matter at all? I told you the story about James and how James's issue was really about the story that his brain had believed and the story that his brain was telling him about his legs, and that's why he couldn't walk forward and backwards. But let me tell you the story about my patient, Thomas. Thomas was this guy who had epilepsy, really bad seizures. We got his seizures under control, right? He was coming to see me in follow-up. Just for follow-up, he had been seizure-free for more than a year. And in medicine, one of the ways that I like to think about medicine, ideally, what we should be doing when somebody comes with any medical problem is we're searching to cure them from their problem, right? To completely get rid of it. Being seizure-free for a year is as close to a cure as you can get. right? So Thomas is coming to see me. Everything is going great. So during our appointment, I say to Thomas, so what are you doing with yourself, right? Like I'm thinking he's going to tell me about work that he's doing, or if he's in school, or if he's traveling the world and enjoying life. But you know what he said to me? He looked at me and he said, Doc, I'm not doing anything. I have epilepsy. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, are you just waiting for the next seizure to happen? Right? Like, he had fully identified with this diagnosis, with this label that we had given him. He believed that that's who he was. And I'm not trying to downplay what Thomas had gone through. I completely get how having a chronic illness impacts every aspect of your life. I get it as a neurologist, but I also get it as somebody who has had 2 kidney transplants in his life. So I was diagnosed with kidney failure when I was 18 years old. I had my first kidney transplant at 28, 8 days after graduating from medical school, and my dad was my donor. And even all these years later, 20 years later, my dad is still doing amazing. Him and my mom, they do ballroom dancing all the time. And then about 5 years ago, during COVID, I had another kidney transplant, and another Black man saved my life. And this was my cousin-in-law, Scott, so somebody that's not even blood related to me. So I get what Thomas was going through. I get what it's like to look at yourself in the mirror and not recognize who you are anymore. I get what it's like to have a chronic illness that's causing you to be on meds and makes you feel like crap. I get what it's like to have a chronic illness impact your finances and impact your future. But damn, do we really have to just strongly identify with these diagnoses and labels that we're given? And so he had just completely identified with this. And as fathers, we see this every day when a kid identifies with something that's negative and that as a result holds him back, right? We see when a kid says, no, I'm bad at math. No, I'm not athletic. I'm not smart. I'm not good at school. I'm shy. I'm not a leader. And the thing is that those kind of labels that we identify with and we see kids identify with, if we're not careful, those labels become cages. A brain first dad understands that one of the most important jobs he has is helping his children develop empowering identities. Because people will rise and fall to the stories that they believe about themselves. People will rise and fall to the identities that they cultivate, even if those identities are coming from them, coming from family, coming from friends, or coming from society. The most powerful lesson that neuroscience teaches fathers is this: attention shapes the brain. When you constantly focus on, what you constantly focus on grows. Neurons that fire together wire together. If you constantly focus on criticism, well, criticism grows. If you constantly focus on mistakes, mistakes grow and mistakes become your identity. If you constantly focus on fear, then fear holds you back because it becomes your operating system. If you constantly focus on growth, then you grow personally, professionally, you start to develop. If you focus on your character, then your character grows. If you focus on your confidence, then your confidence grows. If you focus on success, then your success grows. If you focus on wealth, then your wealth grows. If you focus on connection, then love grows. And the question isn't whether you're shaping your child's brain, because you are, whether you realize it or not. The question is this: what are you teaching them to notice? What are you teaching them that their brains are now going to constantly focus on? 20 years from now, your children won't remember every lecture that you gave them. They're not going to remember every rule that you had in the house. But you know what they will remember? They'll remember how it felt like to be around you. They'll remember whether they felt safe around you, whether they felt safe to be themselves, safe to talk to you about things and to be open and honest. They'll remember whether they could come to you with anything. When they're 30 years old, don't expect your children to come to you and seek advice if you didn't create that safe space for them when they were 3 years old or 13 years old. Even when they're adults, your kids will remember if they felt seen by you as children, whether they felt valued by you, and whether they felt loved by you. Because as fathers, we don't just create memories, we create nervous systems. We create brains and spinal cords and nerves and emotions. We create the voices in their heads that follow them their entire life. We create today what our relationship with them will be like in the future and what their relationships with their children, our grandkids, will be like in the future. So what does a Brain First Dad do? Brain First Dad does 4 things. First, you got to manage your own brain. You can't raise a healthy child if your brain is dysregulated or dysfunctional. You got to make sure you're getting enough sleep. You got to make sure that you're exercising. You got to make sure that you're eating healthy. You got to make sure that you're managing your stress in healthy ways. You got to make sure that emotionally you got it together. Your brain is the emotional thermostat of your home, of your children's brain, of your entire family. The second thing that a Brain First Dad does is that a Brain First Dad tells empowering stories. The stories that you tell your children become the stories that they tell themselves. So you got to speak about possibility and resilience and courage and growth and love. The third thing that a Brain First Dad does is shape and protect their children's identity. Don't allow labels, outside labels, to become limitations on who they are. Your child is not their grades. They are not their mistakes. They are not their diagnoses. They are not their failures. Your child is not your past. And just because you went through something, it doesn't mean that they're going to go through it. My sons saw me go through kidney failure. And I remember my oldest son at the time came to me and said, and asked me, was he going to get this because I've gone through it and he's my son. And I had to reassure him that that was not going to be the case. Your children are not you. They're going to have very different lives and experiences than you did. They are also not their mother, right? Regardless of the relationship that you have with their mother. You want to help them build their identities rooted in character, potential, and love. The fourth thing, a Brain First Dad prioritizes connection. Connection is the foundation of everything else, how connected they feel to you. Children will rarely remember the toys that you got them, but they'll remember that you were there for them. They'll remember that you showed up to their games and their concerts. They'll remember whether or not you listened and whether you paid attention. They'll remember whether or not you cared. The older I get, the more amazed that I am that with regards to like the power of your brain, that everything about who we are begins in our brains. And as fathers, at its core, it's not simply about raising children. It's about shaping their brains. It's about helping our children develop emotional, psychological, and neurological foundations so that they can thrive in this life, regardless of what's thrown at them. So I told you about James and how James walked into my office convinced that he couldn't move forward. A lot of fathers are doing the same thing. They're convinced that they can't move forward. And as a result, a lot of children are convinced that they can't move forward. Everybody seems to be stuck, not because physically there's something wrong, but they're stuck because of the stories that their brains have learned to believe. A Brain First Dad helps his children challenge those stories. He teaches them to move forward, one step at a time. And in doing so, he doesn't just change behavior. He changes their brains, he changes his family, and ultimately, he changes generations. Thank you. Oops, I can't hear you. Oh, there we go.
Extremely powerful, Doctor. Very, very powerful. A lot of gems were dropped. And I just want to open up the conversation to the brothers that are on the call. I would like to actually start off with, well, I did already, but I want to do it again. Thanking you so much for all that you shared with us this evening. But my question to you is that I've met many doctors, neuroscientists and all, but I've never met a doctor that has the depth of understanding how everything connects. And you're more or less like a motivational speaker. And I love the way you connected every aspect of life to the brain. Yeah. And where did you get, I mean, did they teach you that in school or I don't, where did you get all this knowledge from, if I may ask?
I think in part it's what I've been through in life. So I briefly shared that I'm a two-time kidney transplant recipient, diagnosed with kidney failure when I was 18. I was a college scholarship athlete. And so it changed my perspective on a lot of things. To be able to go through college and med school and kidney failure was certainly tough and had my moments of anger and resentment. But what really got me through that was the mindset that I've had. And what I realized is when I was part of this big epilepsy group for years. And the biggest impact I had on patients' lives wasn't when I was prescribing them medications or even taking them to the operating room to do epilepsy surgery. It was really when I got them to think very differently about their health, their life, and what they were capable of, right? And the small things that they could change that would have a huge impact on their health and their life. And so today, I see everything through the lens of how is everybody's brain being wired based on their experiences. You know, Even when we talk about politics, usually the politician that can best communicate things that get stuck in our subconscious mind, things that speak the brain's language, which is short, repetitive, and highly emotional, they're the ones that are always going to win, whether you like them or not, right? So, and everybody is being brainwashed in some way. One of the things that I tell people, and especially tell my kids, is that from the moment that you're born, everybody is fighting to control the way that you're thinking because your thoughts are the most powerful things that you have about you. If I can control how you think, then I can control how you act. I can control how you buy. I can control where you spend your money. I can control how you vote. I can control how you live your life. I can control you in every sense of the imagination. And that was one of the things that I talked about in my TEDx Harlem speech.
Yes, on point. Thank you so much, Doctor. Anyone else have a question or a comment? Some takeaway that you were able to glean from this amazing conversation?
Yeah, I actually had a question. Given given what you mentioned about the brain body connection and just how society is vying for a piece of our brain, what's the way to sort of like deprogram some of that miseducation we've received thus far? Um, in today's society, like and at our ages, like, is it too late for us to deprogram and to start thinking our own thoughts? And how do we tell? And then another part is, how do we tell like what we're thinking is actually our thoughts versus what we've been programmed to think?
Yeah, most people don't have an original thought, right? I mean, when you think about it, so your brain is always capable of making new neurons and new connections your entire life. Like I mentioned before, that there are certain periods of time that are critical periods where it's a lot easier for it to do so, but your brain is constantly making new neurons and new connections based on the decisions you make every day. Exercise is a big promoter of neuroplasticity. So exercise is really meant for your brain, not your body, right? And it's the best antidepressant, anti-anxiety treatment we have. Getting enough sleep is really important for your brain health. That's when your brain is making new neurons and new connections. And so when it comes to the actual thoughts that you have, when you look at most people, it's thought that we have somewhere between 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. And 90 to 95% of those thoughts are the same exact thoughts that you had yesterday. And then we wonder why people can't change their lives. Your life is a reflection of the thoughts that you have, of the inner dialogue that you have. And out of those 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts, 60 to 70% of them are negative. And so people aren't even aware that they're having all these negative thoughts that are constantly repeating themselves. So the first thing you want to do is practice awareness. What is it that being aware of the thoughts that you're having every day? We have within our brains this system called a reticular activating system that makes us aware of things that are important to us. So like a common example would be a few years, or is like, yeah, 20 years ago. I went in and bought this car. It was a car that I fell in love with. I thought was absolutely beautiful. I had never seen it before on the road. I'm driving it back home, off the lot, driving it back home. All of a sudden, I see 3 different people driving the same car, right? And it wasn't that we all went and got the car at the same time. It's that I told my brain that this car was really important to me, and so now it makes me aware of it.
Right. Yep.
If you're telling your brain that just negative things are really important to you by focusing on that, it's going to show you evidence of those negative things. Right? Whatever you tell your brain, this is important to me, your brain is always looking to prove you right.
Right.
So you want to pick thoughts that align with the life that you want, that align with the health and the happiness and the love that you want in your life and the success that you want. And then your brain will look to prove you right when it comes to those things. I've seen people that get the worst diagnosis possible. Like they should be dead in a year according to all the research.
Right.
And yet 20 years later, they're still alive and doing well because they didn't buy into that, the bullshit of the diagnosis. They focused on other things. So focus on thoughts that align with the life you truly want, regardless of what your senses tell you, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your sense of touch, because your senses are always lying to you anyway, right? Focus on what you want and have thoughts that align with that.
Yeah, good point. One follow-up question. You mentioned exercise. Does that include all forms of exercising, even weightlifting as well, or are we talking about cardio only?
Yeah, I mean, weightlifting is really great. Weightlifting, I mean, exercise in general is really great, but certainly weightlifting is really good. Putting on muscle and lean muscle, because as we all get older, I'm 47, so putting on a bunch of muscle is not going to be good for my joints, right? And we see athletes do this as they get older, like Kobe Bryant slimmed down as he got older, so that way his joints could take all that pounding. But muscle, when you contract your muscle, it releases chemicals that are not just healthy for your body, but healthy for your mind. Muscle is very protective of your entire body, including your brain. But also, if you play sports, right? And as men, competition is really important for our testosterone levels. One of the ways to spike your testosterone is to compete. You can do that playing chess, you can do that playing basketball. I grew up playing and competing in tennis, so I still play tennis. And playing racket sports, it's associated with like a 10-year increase in life expectancy compared to people that don't play sports at all.
Yeah.
Right. So exercise can look like anything. My parents, they do ballroom dancing still, and they're pushing 80. And you'd look at them, you would never think they were 80.
One thing you didn't touch on, I'm sorry, I didn't want to take up too much time from everyone. One thing I didn't really hear you touch on is food and the impact
Yeah.
that has on your brain.
Yeah.
Can you just give kind of like just some thoughts around food? I know obviously sugar, I think, is not good. Alcohol, I hear you talk about a lot. Any
Yeah.
form of it, any amount of it. Can you just kind of touch on food a bit?
Yeah, so quick story. So I had a patient that was sent to me. She had horrible epilepsy, horrible seizures. She was in her 30s. She had had 2 brain surgeries to try to cure her seizures, didn't work. By the time she was sent to me, she was on 7 different anti-seizure medications and was still seizing. I got her seizure free for 6 months, and all I did was just take soda out of her diet. That's all I did.
Wow.
She ended up back in the ER 6 months later, and I was like, what's going on? Why are you back in the emergency room? And she said to me, you will never take soda out of my diet again. And she had 2 1-liter bottles of Pepsi at the bedside, right? The foods that we eat play a huge role in our health. Food initially is designed to keep us healthy, to help us manage illness. But the way that we eat nowadays, I mean, everything is like processed, and even fruits and vegetables, they spray with all these chemicals. But the way that we eat nowadays, it causes diseases. We're not meant to eat 3 meals a day as human beings, right? Early humans had to like walk and run to be able to get food. and maybe they ate, once every few days, right? Like some meat product, but they might have had access to different berries and vegetables and fruits. But they weren't having food all day, every day. They couldn't order DoorDash and have food come to them. They couldn't just go to a cabinet. They had to work for their food. We don't ever have to work for our food now. And it takes work for our bodies to break down food, right? And when our bodies are trying to break down food, cells are being torn apart in our gut. That causes inflammation. That inflammation doesn't just stay in your gut. That inflammation travels all over your body. If you're experiencing a height of that inflammation in your stomach, they call it gastritis. If you're experiencing that inflammation in your heart, they call it, myocarditis. If it's in your brain, they call it encephalitis. It's the same damn thing. We have all these specialists potentially treating the same thing in different ways. And so you want to be eating in really healthy ways, foods that are not processed, getting 2 to 3 liters of water in you per day, staying away from the toxic stuff. Alcohol is absolutely horrendous. Like this idea that they sold us on that a glass of wine per day is good for your heart is absolute nonsense. Alcohol is associated with over 200 different diseases, including heart disease. It's associated with dementia, seizures, 7 different forms of cancers. It plays a role in every bad thing that happens in our society. It is absolutely horrendous. But if I'm the powers of be and I want to control people and control how they think, I'm definitely telling you to drink alcohol because it's easier to control you if you're intoxicated or if your brain's not working properly.
Can I have I'd like to ask a question. Follow up on that.
Can
Hey, Mike, you're muted.
Thank you. Paul?
Oh, hey everybody, how you doing? I just want to say I made the switch right before the summer 2 months. I started eating once a day, and the physical transformation for my body just I it was I could feel the difference in that inflammation, specifically like my joints felt better. I was moving faster, and so yeah, I just want to say that. But I did have a question. Um, from a neurological perspective, I'm a teacher. So I get a lot of kids who are labeled ADHD, opposite defiant disorder, and things like that. And I often wonder, why is it that how does someone get diagnosed with ADHD at such a young age, but what am I trying to say? They still find areas, they can focus on areas of interest, but when it comes to things that are not interesting, they don't, they don't want to do it, or they get hyperactive. And then as a teacher, they come to me, they're labeled with ADHD. And I go, huh, can you shed any light on that? I don't even know if I make sense at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the number of people diagnosed with ADHD skyrocket. And not everybody necessarily has ADHD, and ADHD is not necessarily a bad thing either. Right? The way that our society has evolved, we have evolved in a way that our brains do not focus as well, right? Like just even if you think about social media and how we scroll through posts, right? That impacts our brains and the kind of information that we can take in. And as somebody who's gone through all these different levels of school, a lot of educational programs are based on 19th century neuropsychological models, which means that we are 200 years outdated. It is the ideal way to learn is not to sit in a classroom and have somebody try to, force feed you information. That is not the ideal way to learn. But we still have a lot of programs like that. There are some kids that can adapt and tolerate that to some extent. There are some kids that don't. What you see with people who have ADHD, like you said, when it's something that they're very interested in, they do incredibly well. They can focus, right? And if you can channel that, a lot of very successful people do have ADHD. A lot of multimillionaires and heads of industry, they do have ADHD, but they've learned how to channel that energy. And when I see adults with ADHD, one of the things that I have them do is I create a exercise program for them, right, to help regulate the hyperactivity in their brains. So that way, then they can focus on the work that they want to do. But a lot of the diagnosing of kids with ADHD, it's kind of like almost like a wastebasket diagnosis. If a kid is not behaving in a way that you want them to, and they're hyperactive, you just give them that label. And it becomes something that follows them for life.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, I want to thank you for all that information. I just wanted to say I never knew, and I thank you for sharing that. I never knew that your brain working out works on your brain, because a lot of times I'm stressed out or I'm going through stuff. I just hit the gym or I start walking, and I get home and I feel better. And it's like it's nice to know that that's what's really working it. And yeah, I just wanted to share that because I've been doing that for years. I would go through stuff and I would just get upset and I would say, all right, let me go to the gym. And I would hit the gym and like you said, it works. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Let me tell you, like when people are starting to develop things like dementia, the best thing that they can do is start exercising. Like studies show, even if you walk 30 to 40 minutes a day, some of those dementia symptoms will resolve themselves. Yeah, but we don't teach people that. We put them on these medications. Actually, somebody today, I was at a gym and one of the managers came to me because she knows I'm a neurologist, and she's like, hey, they put my dad on all these medications for his dementia, but they're not working. I was like, yeah, they don't work, right? They don't work. They say it slows the progression of disease down, but I don't know how you actually measure that. The best thing for him to do is to start walking and start exercising. And even when it comes to learning, you know how when we were in school, we would all cram until the last minute before taking a test? You're better off going for a run an hour before the test than you are cramming. You'll remember more information and do better. Exercise is made for your brain.
Beautiful, beautiful. Brother James.
Hey Doc, I want you to speak on this. Years ago I used to work with this program, and it was intended to have the kids to exercise in the morning before they came to school, and they would normally put the kids that were more behavior prone or couldn't remember the work in the class. And if you can get them worked out hard enough and get them tired hard enough, them same kids that are run around all day, they'd sit down and focus. Them same
Yep.
kids that would fail class would actually focus more in the class. So I know a lot of us are dads and some of us have different issues with our kids, but can you encourage us to have them kids wake up early in the morning like a lot of us do to get that steam burned out of them, even if it's just taking them to school early, get them on that playground. No matter what
Yeah.
they're doing, it's gonna have that effect. Can you speak on that, sir?
Absolutely. So exercises causes the release of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is the chemical that makes your brain make new neurons and new connections. And so that's why it's so important for learning, because if you exercise, then you're making all these neurons that make it a lot easier to learn information. Exercise also releases a lot of the feel-good hormones like dopamine, right? Which not just makes you feel good, but also dopamine is part of our motivation and reward system. So it encourages you to keep doing that behavior. It's the same chemical that gets released when somebody is addicted. I don't know if you guys ever used to watch this show, Caesar Milan, the Dog Whisperer. Caesar Milan's thing is this, right?
Yeah.
Before you give affection or discipline, you need to exercise the dog. You need to go running with the dog, tire the dog out, and then discipline and affection. Human beings are the same way. If you can exercise somebody, right, and get them to burn some of that excess energy, get their brains feeling good, get their brains releasing brain-derived neurotrophic factor, get their brains releasing dopamine, it's going to be a lot easier to get them to focus on stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for all these gems that you're dropping this evening. Really appreciate it. Paul?
Hey everybody. My next question, because you just brought it up, about oh no, never mind. You answered. You said exercise and never mind. James answered it. Oh, put my hand down.
Some brothers that did not have a chance to speak, this is your opportunity. Jump in with your questions or your comments or something. One takeaway that I received, the daddy's brain. Thank you so much for that. That needs to be talked about more in our society.
Yeah. And here's the thing though, that's a little tricky sometimes. It could be linked to how close you are to the mother, right? Because a question that comes up is, well, why do you have some dads that are very involved and some dads that don't give a damn? It's linked to how close you are to the mother, how much you value the mother, how much you love the mother, how much you respect the mother, and how present you are.
Beautiful. Thank you. If no one else has anything, I do have a question for you, Doctor. You have two boys.
Yep.
How is this landing on your sons? All this knowledge.
I mean, so I've been talking to them about brain stuff since they were really, really young. And I
Okay.
think, with kids, like, I'm sure they take it in, but I'm just still their father, right? So, like, I'm not the cool guy. They've been able to have some great experiences. They were at my TED Talk. They have like a few years ago, so my dad played some tennis too, so I got him a placard at the US Open here in New York that will always be on the grounds of the US Open. And on the placard has my son's name. It says the Douyon man, my dad, myself, and my two sons. They don't care. Like they don't care that I do speaking or any of that stuff. But I'm sure that they take a lot of it in because we have conversations all the time. And sometimes they just bring things up and they're like, oh yeah, you tell us that, our thoughts are the most powerful thing that we have. So when this person says this and it doesn't align with what I want, I know to kind of discard it.
Thank you. And part of my question is that so you have your sons that's actually interacting with their peers, right? And their peers are promoting the
Yep.
screen, promoting a different mindset. So
Yep.
now dad's coming with his mindset, and now their peers, and then they want to fit in.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So whenever, with me, we're like always outside playing basketball. We're doing different things, trying to get them away from their screens. Because studies show like if we all put down our screens for just weeks, our brains will start operating very differently. And so trying to keep their brains healthy, trying to get them thinking for themselves it's certainly a struggle because you always have outside influences, outside factors. But when they're with me, this is what I'm promoting.
thank you. And what's the effects that it has if we get off the screen for a few weeks? You said it has a great effect
So
on
your attention changes. You can attend for longer, right? So people have a real difficult time paying attention to things, and studies show that our attention span has decreased. At one point, we could just pay attention for like 7 seconds. It's probably less now. So when you get off your screens, that gets a lot longer. So you're able to concentrate more. Your mood improves, right? Like you're less likely to be anxious and depressed. You're not comparing yourself to what you're constantly seeing on these screens. So that's really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Brother Doug, you usually have a question or a comment. You're muted.
How you doing? Good evening. I'm sorry for coming in late. I was doing so much running. I was waiting for this time to come on and see what's going on. Then I fell out, boom, on the couch, and then I woke up. I was like, oh my God. So I had to run, get a cup of coffee, throw some water in my face, and jump on. Thank you for coming on, Doc, and spending this time with us. I have a brother who had a stroke. I just want to ask a quick question. Just I was with him at the doctor's appointment earlier. And I'm gonna get another neurologist for him, but he does something that I call a loop. He'll keep going in loops and loops. Like he'll get in the bed, he'll get out the bed, he'll, maybe a half an hour in the bed, he'll get out the bed, he'll go in the kitchen, he'll get something to eat, watch TV. About 15 minutes later, get back in the bed and do the same thing. He'll do this sometime throughout the day. What's the best way to maybe break this type of loop and to also maybe, other neurologists, if they got different neurologists that can work on this brain injury thing, can help them?
What symptoms does he still have from the stroke, if any?
He struggles cognitively.
Okay.
His physical ability is back and forth. So and we talking like 4 years in, he'll go back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, he had a home attendant who was kind of aggressive on him, and I had to get him out of there, and that kind of set him back, give him a setback. I had to actually escort this guy to his residence and stuff like that. And it set him back. So I'm like saying, wow, what's going on here? So now he regressed a little in his physical and mental ability, but he's still there where I can work, get him the help that he needs to go forward.
Yeah. You ever go to the zoo and see a lion in the cage or a tiger in the cage, and all they do is pace back and forth,
Yes.
right? We do the same thing when we're trapped. And whether we're trapped in a physical space or trapped in our brains, one of the things that's really important, we all need a reason to get up in the morning. We all need a purpose. And to help him find a purpose, so he gets out of the house and has a way that he's contributing, but also get him working out. If you can get him a trainer, I find that that's much better than doing physical therapy after some point. Physical therapy may be good at the beginning after a stroke, but after some point, just get somebody a trainer, get them in the gym, and really kind of working out. But if you can get him exercising on a regular basis, find him a purpose, a reason to get up in the mornings to do something, get him a hobby, get him just enjoying life and experiencing life. We all need that, right? And the worst thing you can do after you've had a stroke or some kind of brain injury is tell your brain that you don't need something anymore. So a lot of times you'll see if somebody had like an extreme example, they're paralyzed on one side of their body, they stop working, trying to work out that side of their body. But you're basically telling your brain you don't need that side of your body anymore. And that part of the brain that's supposed to supply that part of the body starts to wither even more. So you still, weeks and years, have to try to do things with that side of the body. And 4 years after his stroke, I'm sure it's impacted him cognitively and emotionally, but you've got to get him enjoying life and finding a way to contribute to this world. We are all here to contribute to this world. Like I always say that the reason that I'm on this planet is to make this world a little bit better, because for a short period of time I existed in it. And I believe that that's true for everybody, regardless of what we've gone through. And maybe his path is to teach people who have had strokes how to overcome them.
Right. I mean, that's yeah, a good thought. But I mean, he was a doctor before that, and that's the thing also, psychotherapist. So I find it hard that he can't help push out of this thing with help from, from what he's
Where
had
is he?
already.
Where are you?
Huh?
Where are you guys based out of?
I'm in Brooklyn. We're in Brooklyn.
Why don't you, I'll put my email in the chat, and then why don't we connect and I can talk to him?
Okay.
Because I'm in Queens, actually.
Okay. I see it. I got it there. Thank you.
To help him get through this tough time.
I appreciate it. I took a screenshot of it.
Yeah. Uncle Mike, I have a question.
Doug has been incredibly supportive of his brother. Amazing, real brother. So I appreciate that he can get some kind of support. Someone today had a comment.
Hey, what's up, fellas? This is Daryl. I had a question to something that you mentioned earlier. After maybe 30 years or some significant time of a certain diet, and a certain way of going about life. You mentioned that you're 47. What is the body's responsive rate to a change? Like if you decided to eat healthy or more healthy than you're already eating, what's the body's responsive rate? And then my other question is, I'm not sure if you touched on this earlier, and if you did, forget about it. I'll look at the video. But you mentioned alcohol having an impact on the body and the neurons, but what about marijuana?
Yeah, so initially when you make a change, you might find that things get a little bit tougher because your body's kind of going through withdrawal depending on what change you've made. And so it can be really tough for people. So sometimes I'll see somebody who quit smoking, and then a couple months later is when they've had a stroke, and they're like, but I quit smoking 2 months ago, and smoking is one of the leading causes of stroke. And I'm like, I get it, but sometimes your body goes into that initial shock and you're doing this more for long term. And just because you stop something right now doesn't mean that the inflammation stops right now, right? Like the
Right.
inflammation and the negative impact it's had on the body is still occurring until the body's able to clear some of that stuff out. And sometimes it takes weeks, months, or even years for your body to kind of get back to a place of health. So marijuana, for a while, I was considered a medical marijuana expert because I prescribed it a lot for neurological issues, especially epilepsy. So marijuana changes your brain. Marijuana, we know, interferes with the normal way that your brain is going to evolve. So one of the things I talked about is like your brain goes through these periods of time where it's trying to become as efficient as possible. And part of that is it might get rid of brain cells, neurons, and connections that you don't use, right, to become just really efficient. Well, we know marijuana interferes with that process. And so if you were to weigh the brain of somebody who never smoked weed compared it to somebody who smokes weed on regular, the person who smokes weed on regular, their brain is going to be heavier. Their brain is almost fatter, right? And it can cause like neurons loss in certain areas. So it's like your brain is kind of like fat and holy. And the way that that can kind of play out is, I've known people that have smoked weed their entire lives, smoked a lot of weed their entire lives. And you'll refer
Wait,
to them as
sorry,
being good.
you said holy like holes in the brain, or
Yeah,
holy
like
like
holes in the brain. No, not
okay,
holy spiritually, like holes in the brain, right? And so I've known people that have smoked weed their entire lives and they're real chill, right? Like it'll be like they're real chill, nothing bothers them, they're real laid back. But it's because their brains just don't process things the way that it's supposed to, process things a lot slower. And it's because the marijuana interfered with how their brain has evolved over time. Their brains are fat, full of holes, and slow as a result. And when I prescribe medical marijuana, I have to kind of weigh the risk and benefits. So I had this 5-year-old girl that was having hundreds of seizures per day. And as a result, she could not speak. She couldn't walk. She was in a wheelchair. So I prescribed her medical marijuana just because I was like, well, the benefits of that may outweigh the risk.
at
And she
5?
came back to my office and she was talking and walking, right? And her seizures went down to maybe a dozen a day, which is much better than a few hundred a day. And she was spilling popcorn all over my office, right? So that's a good thing, but over time, we have to worry about the impact that that's going to have for her.
Got it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for that feedback.
Thank you, Doctor. We have time for just one more question and then we're going to wrap it up. But before we take Paul, Dr. Philippe, can you tell, you sharing so much, a wealth of knowledge, which is just, we can't thank you enough for your time and for your expertise and dropping these gems for us. But I understand that you have an online course. So if some of the brothers want to take it or tell their family about it, can you just give us more information about your online course and what it entails?
Yeah, so my online course is called Take Charge of Your Brain. So, and it's broken up into 4 different modules. And what it focuses on initially is the impact that having a vision for your life, living a purposeful life, the impact that that has on your brain, and how you can use your brain to create the life that you really want for yourself. And then it kind of moves on to, well, what are the things that are impacting your brain on a daily basis that you have absolute control over of? Because sometimes you don't need to make these big sweeping changes, right? Like if I tell you to completely overhaul your diet, that might be really tough, right? But I told you the story about how I got this woman seizure free just by taking soda out of her diet. And so sometimes it's the small changes that have really big impact. And then it goes on to like how chronic illnesses impact your brain health. Because if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, that's a leading cause of dementia. Everybody worries about Alzheimer's, but Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. There are things that you do every day that set up your brain for health, success, wellness, wealth, or there are things that you do that set up your brain for failure. And so knowing that has a huge impact in your life. And then the fourth module is really focused on, well, how do I evolve personally, professionally, financially, and spiritually so that way I can really create the life that I want for myself. And so
Beautiful.
that's the course.
And is it interactive with you, the course? When someone takes
So yeah, so at times I what I do with it is that I have a weekly group coaching session. So the course is 70 plus videos broken up into these 4 modules. After each video, and the videos will be like anywhere from 5 to 12 minutes. And after the videos, it's going to be 3 to 5 questions to answer. And then sometimes what I do is, we do weekly group coaching sessions to go with the course. So if you have a group of people that wanted to do that, coming from your Real Dads network, then we would do group coaching sessions that are weekly.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Paul, is your hand up for a question? Because we're ready to wrap this up. You have one more question or comment?
Yes, one more question. Doctor, there's been times, I don't know if anybody has ever experienced this, but there have been times where I was working out and my hand, it was like I was holding on to a weight or something, and then my hand seized for a second. So it was like when someone actually has a seizure and like their hand locks up, and then I kind of like gotta squeeze my hand for a second, then like the feeling comes back. Is there a reason for that? I mean, there is a reason, but like I'm posing that to you.
Yeah. So there could be a couple of different reasons that are not necessarily neurological. I mean, you could have a depletion in your potassium levels, your calcium levels that are causing muscles to cramp. There is a condition called I forgot the name of it, but I think it's hyperkalemic periodic paralysis. So when people are exerting themselves because they get a drop in some of these electrolyte levels, that they almost kind of become paralyzed or they cramp up really badly. And so, you just want to make sure that you're getting plenty of fluid, plenty of electrolytes in you. If you're somebody who has, let's say, chronic neck issues, you may have like a disc that's putting a lot of pressure on a nerve. And so now you're adding the physical activity, that muscle is not getting the supply that it needs, right? The information, the electrical signals, the blood flow that it needs, and that can cause it in that moment. So I would just, one of the things you can do is just go to your doctor, just have them check your regular blood work and make sure that everything looks fine.
I appreciate it, and I thank you because I was reading a Men's Health magazine not too long ago, and one of the gurus of working out was like, drink less water when you're working out.
Because you dilute your potassium and calcium levels if you're drinking a lot of water without replacing the electrolytes.
Got you. Yeah. Thank you. And this is totally
have a banana actually. If you have a banana replaces your potassium like that.
Okay. And my wife wanted me to let you know, because she works in neuro, and she wanted me to ask you, do you know Dr. Schutte and Stifle?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But at NYU, that's where I did my training. So like, I know a lot of the doctors there. Like Dr. Ariel Kurzweil is probably still there. But yeah.
Well,
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Philippe. We cannot thank you enough